Welcome back to the channel. This is Roberto with Full Curl Precision. For tonight, before we get into it, again, I've been doing this through all the other videos. If you like, subscribe, and share, I'm going to be doing a giveaway at 200 subs. We're at 185 right now. We're doing a hat, a shirt, and an ammo box. Again, we're doing three, so there'll be three winners. And I cover all of the expenses. So if you get selected to win, you will just go to my website, fullcurlprecision.com. You will email me directly, and all I'm getting is your shipping address, and I get it put together, and I send it to you free of charge. So there's nothing on your end at all. I don't do anything weird with your data. That's just how it works. For tonight, because it came up from a viewer, is 80,000 PSI the future? Well, I think you're going to find the answer to be kind of interesting. So I've gone through, and we're talking about the pros and cons of each one. And when it's all said and done, there's a reason why SIG is kind of quiet on the 277 SIG Fury. The one that is kind of taking off a little bit more is the 7mm backcountry. And I'm going to go through them. So I'm going to talk about the SIG Fury first, and then we're going to talk about the 7 backcountry. I pulled up a couple images, and we're going to talk about what the job of each of these cases is meant to do and what they designed it to go after. So let me turn the camera around. So to start, here we go. That's the 277 SIG Fury on the left, and that's the 270 Winchester on the right. Now, a lot of the claim of the 270 Winchester, as everyone knows, is speed and a flat trajectory. SIG decided they were going to take this and try to see if they could accomplish the same thing out of a short action. Now, that idea is really cool. You can notice a couple differences. For one, they got a slightly sharper shoulder, and so it allows them to fit a little bit more powder in that little case. But you'll also notice it's a two-piece case. So that bottom section is stainless steel and the top section is brass. Now the reason for this is very simple. That stainless steel base that sits in the face of the bolt, that's what actually takes the majority of the pressure. The rest of that doesn't need to be steel because it sits inside the chamber. But because it's a two-piece, it creates potential separage issues. Because, again, it's not a unit piece. It's not singular. So that's the difference between these two. And so the thing is, I've noticed that even though this has a lot of great potential, you're not really seeing rifles or ammunition for the SIG Fury on the shelves. The only time I've ever actually seen any ammunition in it was at a local ranch hand store, and they only had the ammunition. They didn't have a rifle. And it wasn't even that style of brass. It was full brass. So the thing was, it wasn't 80,000 PSI casings. They were 65,000 PSI casings. So it wasn't even the proper advertised ammunition as far as pressure, and the rifles weren't even available. The only two rifles that are somewhat available to the public are the SIG Spear, which is what the military is supposed to be going to, and the SIG Cross. Now, here's the thing about the SIG Cross. It's on average $2,300 to $2,500. The SIG Spear is between $4,000 and $5,000. Now, here's the thing about this, and I'm going to turn towards me for a second. Where I live, in the town that I work in, is a small family-owned mom-and-pop gun store, and it is called Shedhorn Sports. This is basically elk mecca out here, okay? They have their finger on the pulse of all the latest and greatest and everything. They have one of the best, what they call the Hunter's Rendezvous every year. Big names show up here. Leupold, Weatherby, just name it. They show up here. This shop carries rifles in brands and in cartridge selection that I have yet to find anywhere else. Even Cabela's can't compete. Okay? I have seen a better selection here than at Cabela's or Bass Pro Shop. That's not an exaggeration. So here's the thing. They have all sorts of ammunition. I've seen 26 Nosler, I've seen 27 Nosler, and I've seen rifles in those as well. There's a lot of 28 Nosler, so I can see a lot of the unique cartridges, like even a lot of Weatherby stuff. One thing I have yet to see is the Sig Fury. And I had a conversation with them, with one of the guys there, and they said they have a hard time finding it with their suppliers. So here it is, a shop that has their pulse on the market at the latest and greatest. They even get in Seekins and Christensen's, Fierce, name it. If it's hot, if it's a hot item, they can get it. They get Horizon rifles. They get all sorts of stuff here. They can't find a legitimate source for Sig Fury. They're just having a hard time. So they've kind of decided to stay away from it. That's what I understand. That's the way I took away from it, from the conversation, is they're not bothering with it. And it's not like they wouldn't try if it wasn't available. This is where we get into now next. Actually, before I get into that, here's the other thing too. So being 80,000 PSI with that two-piece case, it has a couple pros and cons. One, being that the top portion is brass, reloading will be a lot easier than the 7 backcountry. However, because it's a two-piece brass, it has potential for separating. And that's me speaking as a engineer side of it too. Now, is that the case? I don't know. But there's even discussions that the military is having a pause on it because they're finding difficulties with it operating well inside those rifles. There's another side of this too. SIG is a huge partner with the Meat Eater crew. And I've watched their show and I listened to their podcast and everything. And for a while, they were really pushing this the 277 Sig Fury through their shows. Now, while they still use the SIG rifles, I have yet to, in any of them, hear them talk about the Sig Fury anymore. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't have them and they aren't using them. But the thing is, unless you are sponsored by SIG or have a real close connection, getting this ammunition and a rifle chambered in it is rather difficult. A lot of them are using SIG Cross rifles. But the thing is, you're hearing 6.5 PRC, 6.5 Creedmoor, 7 PRC, 308. You're hearing anything other than their latest and greatest. Now the question is, why? There's a couple ideas I have. For one, it's not like it's doing anything so special that the 270 can't already do. It's said that out of a 20-inch barrel or 22-inch barrel, it's driving a 150 grain Nosler AccuBond long range at over 3,000 feet per second. That's great. That's fantastic. Well, out of a 24-inch barrel, I'm getting over 3,000 feet per second with a 150 grain Nosler AccuBond long range. Out of with a standard 270 Winchester. So here's the thing. I have better availability. I'm under 65,000 PSI. Brass is easier to get. The cost is there. The rifle selection is way better. So while I get the advantages of a short action, did it really do anything significantly better? I don't know yet because there's not enough on it. So it's really cool that they're trying to do something with it, but the problem is they're running into hiccups. And so here's my thing too. It's come up before. Well, why don't you talk about this more when you're talking about all these different rifle cartridges? Well, you're hearing about it right now. And what you're hearing are the reasons why I don't really consider it a valid cartridge. It's not because it doesn't have good numbers in theory. Because we can talk about theory all day long. I'm fine with that. But when I talk about things, I also try to bring in the practical. And the practical is you can't get the rifle. You can't get the ammunition. And if you do, it's extremely limited and very expensive. It is not that. The first thing it was designed for was a military cartridge. Hunting cartridge last. Second, and target cartridge last. It doesn't really have a civilian application. Everything that they're doing is going straight to the military. So it's not really like it's available yet. So that covers the SIG Fury. Now we're going to go to the 7 backcountry. Let me turn the camera around. So here's the 7 backcountry on the left, and that's the 280 Ackley on the right. You can notice a couple different things. For one, that the 7 backcountry uses a steel alloy called PEEK alloy. It's a soft steel, and so it's moldable, and it handles much higher pressures than the 280 AI. Now, it doesn't have as sharp of a shoulder, but if you notice, it's also a hair bit shorter, not by a whole lot. That's so that way they can fit a slightly longer bullet in it inside the 3.34. That's what it's meant for. It's meant for throwing heavier bullets at the same velocities as compared to a 280 Ackley. Now, they do this in 2 barrel lengths, 20 and 24. They actually have the data on their boxes of ammunition. Of the 280,000 PSI casings, the SIG Fury and the backcountry, you can at least get a somewhat affordable rifle in the backcountry. You can at least find ammunition. Yes, it's limited. And the only one that's doing it at current is Federal, which is soon to now be 2 companies, Remington, because I believe Federal bought Remington ammunition. And now, so you're going to have a couple suppliers. So it's actually growing. And you can find rifles under $1,000, a little over $1,000, some way more than that. But you can at least find them. Here's what's crazy. It's actually more available than the 280 Ackley, which I find weird because the 280 Ackley is a phenomenal cartridge. Now, here's the pros and cons to this cartridge. For one, you don't have to worry about case separation because it uses a unibody, right? Just like every other case. It's one piece of material. But the thing is, here's where it gets kind of the caveat. It's much more difficult to reload this case. Actually, and it's honestly, any guy who wants to get into reloading, the 80,000 PSI is going to be its own challenge. It's not hard to find powders that you can definitely pressurize and get 80,000 PSI out of. That's not too difficult because you just use a slightly faster burning powder that's going to give you that powder, that spike in pressure, right? But here's where it gets really challenging. The primers. The primers have to be capable of handling that pressure without blowing out. So even at this moment, it's not going to be all that easy to be able to reload these. And it sounds like you might have to resize these several times before they adapt. Here's another downside. Because it's steel instead of brass, it work hardens way faster. Have you ever taken a paper clip and you straighten it out and then you just kind of bend it back and forth and then at some point it kind of heats up and gets harder and harder and harder and then it breaks? That's work hardening. Whenever you resize something, you're shrinking the neck and then you put a bullet in it and it expands the material. So you're literally shrinking and expanding, shrinking and expanding. And you can only do that to a neck so much before the material work hardens and breaks. That's also why they anneal things, right? So there's that aspect. But according to Federal, the only material that you can, because they have several different types of casings that you can reload, their basic Federal Fusion line, which is shown in this photo. Let me show it again. If you notice, it's a kind of a dull color, right? There's a reason why it's that way. Because it's the most basic. It doesn't have any special coating to it. It has like a little bit of a protective anti-rust, but it's nothing fancy. Let me pull this up. And you can see they're all nickel plated. These are the 7 backcountries. These are the ones that you're supposed to be able to reload. And because it's steel, these are nickel coated on the outside as well as the inside. But here's the problem. after a while, it's going to stretch a little bit and you have to trim the top of the neck. When you do that, when you use that trimmer there and you kind of go around in a circle, it pulls, it's literally going to remove the nickel off the case. So now you have an exposed contact point for any potential rusting. That's a problem. Because it's a steel case, it has the potential to rust. So here's the thing. If you go, we're going to go back and forth. If you go with this is a much more affordable case. However, they're saying it's not reloadable. You have to use the premium casings to reload it. If you can reload it. Now, I get there's a lot of guys that aren't going to be reloading this. But that's kind of the problem. If you're spending $80 or $90 a box, don't you want to have the ability to reload it? It would make sense to me. So you have two cases, right? Two rifles and casings right now. Going back to the Sig Fury, even if you can get the rifle, having a lack of good supply chain for ammunition means even if you went out and bought a rifle, you basically just have an expensive paperweight because you're not really going to be able to use it. Maybe a little bit here, maybe a little bit there. The only reason the MeatEater crew could do that is because SIG was specifically supplying them ammunition. But we don't have that luxury because we're the public, right? So that doesn't make any sense. Who wants that mess? And the 7 backcountry, honestly, if you're going to go for 80,000 PSI, that's the way to go. At least you can find ammunition. At least you can get rifles. Is it limited? Yes. Is it better than the Sig Fury? Absolutely. And honestly, I think it's going to be a better cartridge overall. The only thing is, don't expect a reasonable amount of reloading out of it. Because again, steel as a whole work hardens way faster than brass does. That's a fact of life. Now here's the one negative I will go with this also. Is these casings are known to hit 80,000 PSI and show no signs of pressure. That's kind of a problem. So if you're sticking with factory, you're going to be perfectly fine. That's not an issue because the factory allows you to stay underneath that. But if you're reloading and you're trying to find your ceiling, you can't find it until it's basically a grenade in your face. That's the thing. These can, I guess they tested it and they can handle up to 110,000. Here's the insane part. Your rifle can only handle 120,000. So that's the thing about 65,000 PSI. Most rifles are double that strength of capacity to withstand. So if you go with that and the case itself is not showing any pressure signs until 110,000, you're damaging your rifle. That's dangerous. That's chaotic. So you're kind of forced into staying with factory. That's not a good idea to me. And here's the thing. If you want to stick with factory, I respect that, and you can have that as a safe alternative, right? So if you're going to stick with factory or stick with their exact reloading data and do not veer from it, meaning don't do any sort of experimentation, you can absolutely do that as long as you can find the powders and the primers. The issue right now isn't access of bullet selection or casings, which actually that is its own issue because you have to buy fully loaded ammunition and shoot it in order to have casings, or you're pulling the bullets. So it's not like you can do that much more with these. It's very limited. Now, hopefully it gets a lot better. You know, of the two, I would rather see the backcountry be a greater success because I feel like it'd be a better hunting cartridge for long-range application. When I say long-range application, I'm talking 400 plus. I'm not talking like, you know, what the guys are thinking at like 1,000 yards. It has a great potential, but at the same time, The Sig Fury, here's where I feel about it. It's a great idea, but it's not really doing anything so fantastic that the standard 270 with a 24-inch barrel can't do. So I'm going to stick with that 270. As a matter of fact, I've mentioned before, I am developing two new 27 calibers. One is to have a short action that would do better than this than the Sig Fury. It's not that I don't want to see the Sig Fury succeed. I do. I think it'd be great to have it. But it has to be done in a manner that people can actually afford to do it, and it has to be safe. Right now, by the sounds of it, it's not doing that. Because for the military to reconsider a contract, that's a big deal. And so, and for sponsors to go, yeah, we don't want to do this because our reputation's on the line, that's also a big deal. And here's what's crazy. SIG does make some really good stuff. They make some really good ammunition. They make some pretty good rifles. You know, they do have they are an imperfect company just like any other, so they have their hiccups. But they do make some good stuff, and I'm okay with that. But in this particular case, they have to go back to the drawing board. So it may be a long while before we see a revision of this, or they may decide it's not worth it and just scrap it altogether. Who knows? But I will say this, at current, if you're going to pick a 27 caliber, the Sig Fury is just not it. It just doesn't have the longevity behind it yet. You'd be better off going with a 6.8 Western, or a 270 Winchester, or a 270 WSM. Or even a 270 Weatherby. At least you can find a rifle, even though it's going to be so limited, and so is the ammunition, but you can at least actually buy them. Weatherby still makes them. So, between the two, 80,000 PSI does have some potential. It's just not there yet. So, if you're going to pick one, definitely go the 7 backcountry. You're better off at this moment because at least you can find the rifles and at least you can find some ammunition, even if that just means buying it online. So that's all I have for tonight. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. I appreciate the support, and we'll talk to you again.